Have you ever just looked around and wondered how huge social changes happen? One minute a certain idea is totally on the fringe, and then boom, seemingly overnight, it's just everywhere. It's the new normal. It's a really fascinating puzzle, and today we are going to unpack the science behind exactly how that works.
Seriously, think about it. Those massive shifts in attitudes, behaviors, social norms, it doesn't feel like they just grow slowly over time, does it? It feels like one day someone just flipped a switch. So, how does that actually happen? How can an entire society kind of change its mind all at once? Well, because the truth is, major change usually isn't this slow, steady, straight line. It's a sudden, dramatic reorganization. Scientists and sociologists have a name for this: the tipping point. It's that kind of magical moment when an idea or a behavior hits a certain threshold and just spreads like wildfire. So, our first stop in solving this mystery is to really look at the mechanics behind this incredible social flip. Let's dig in and figure out what actually makes a whole system tip. The answer really comes down to something called critical mass theory. And the core idea is simple, but it is incredibly powerful. You don't need everyone on board to create change. You just need a specific minimum number of committed, interconnected people. Once you hit that critical mass, the new thing just takes off on its own. It becomes self-sustaining. So, what is that magic number? You might think it's 51%, right? A majority. But sociological research points to a number that's surprisingly small. It suggests that when a truly committed minority hits about 25 to 27% of a population, that can be enough to flip the norm for the entire group. Not half, just a quarter. And check this out. This table shows the whole journey perfectly. It all starts with a tiny group of innovators, maybe 2.5%. Then come the early adopters, the influencers. But the real magic, the tipping point, happens right around that 25% mark. That's when something called social proof kicks in. It's that feeling that, oh, I guess everyone's doing this now. It becomes the new normal. And at that point, the rest of the people, the late majority, they join in, often not even out of passion, but just because of social pressure or because it's just easier that way. Okay, so we know it takes a critical mass to tip the scales. But what exactly is being tipped? What is this system we're all a part of that can change its mind so quickly? This brings us to our second big clue. For an idea to spread and tip, it has to move through some kind of medium, right? And that medium is a kind of shared social mind that connects every single one of us. The sociologist Emil Durkheim actually gave this a name: the collective consciousness. A good way to think of it is as the visible, conscious layer of our society. All the shared beliefs, the laws, traditions, the moral attitudes that kind of hold everything together. It's like the social air we all breathe. It's the thing that gives a culture its unique character. But to really get this, we have to go even deeper. The psychoanalyst Carl Jung suggested that beneath this conscious, agreed-upon reality, there is a collective unconscious. So if Durkheim's conscious is what a society agrees on, like laws and what's polite, Jung's unconscious is about what we all universally feel and recognize without even being taught. It's where we get those common archetypes, like the hero or the mother, that show up in myths and stories all over the world. So one is the visible structure, and the other is the deep, invisible current flowing right under it. Now, this idea of a whole society moving together, this is not new. In fact, our third clue comes from a historian who saw this exact pattern playing out centuries and centuries ago. I'm talking about the brilliant 14th century thinker Ibn Khaldun. He looked at history and saw it wasn't just a bunch of random events. He saw a predictable cycle, a rhythm, driven by the rise and fall of social cohesion. And he called this binding force asabiya. You can think of it as the social glue, that deep sense of shared purpose and solidarity that makes a society strong and dynamic. It's really the historical version of the collective consciousness in action. It's the energy that drives the engine of history. And he saw this crystal clear cycle. A new group, usually out on the fringes, develops this intense asabiya, this incredible group spirit, and they rise to power. But once they're in charge, after a few generations, they get comfortable, they get individualistic, and that social glue, it dissolves. And that creates the perfect vacuum for a new, hungrier, more cohesive group to rise up and repeat the whole cycle all over again. Okay, so we've got the tipping point, the collective mind, the historical cycle, but this all feels so huge, so abstract, right? And that brings us to our final and maybe the most important clue: the power of one single person.
I mean, this is the question, isn't it? the one that can make us feel so powerless. In a world with billions of people, how can my choices, my thoughts, my actions possibly make a real difference in a system this big?
This quote just reframes everything. It says we're not these isolated little drops. We are vital nodes in a deeply interconnected web. And every single shift we make inside ourselves, no matter how small it seems, sends out ripples through the entire network.
Now, stick with me because modern physics actually gives us a powerful way to think about this. It's a concept called entanglement. It's this bizarre but true idea that at a fundamental level, separation might just be an illusion. Particles can be linked in such a way that what happens to one instantly affects the other, even if they're on opposite sides of the universe. It paints this picture where we're all part of this fundamentally interconnected, entangled web. Our thoughts and actions aren't just isolated little events, they resonate. So, let's put all of these clues together: the tipping point, the collective mind, and the individual ripple. When we do, it leads us to a really powerful conclusion about our role, right here, right now.
The philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin had a word for this emerging planetary consciousness. He called it the noosphere, literally the thinking layer of the Earth. He saw it as the next great leap in evolution, a moment when the mind of the planet itself awakens and becomes conscious. Through us.
And what's wild is that so many ancient wisdom traditions and prophecies seem to have seen this coming. But they didn't describe it as some inevitable, predetermined fate that we just have to sit back and watch. They offered a map, pointing to a choice point, a time where humanity has to decide whether to consciously participate in its own evolution. And this lands the responsibility right back on our shoulders. It shifts the focus from passively waiting for something to happen to us to our own active, conscious participation. So the real question isn't whether some ancient prophecy is going to come true. The question is whether we are ready to be a part of it. Because in the end, that's what this all boils down to. You are a node in the network. You are creating ripples with every thought, every choice, every action. So the only question that really matters is this: what future are you choosing to create right here, right now?